I have a few regrets in my life, and 10 of those involve the CNC. These are 10 things I wish I knew when I first got the CNC. Before we get started, if you want to check out any of the bits or accessories or tools or even the machine I'm using in this video, I'll link those in the description below and the pinned comment to help you find them easier. Let's go. Let's get the big one, the big elephant out of the room, straight out of the gate, learning curve. Now, a lot of people are intimidated about CNCs and their learning curve. I was kind of ignorant to the fact that there was going to be a learning curve. I thought I would set this machine up and I could just grab a file somewhere, drag, drop, cut, and I'd be off to the races. Well, it kind of works that way, but kind of not. The 3D printer is a lot like that. There's a file online, you just drag it over to the software, you click print, especially these Bamboo Lab ones. It auto levels, it sets the 0, it does everything for you and prints the file. It's really easy. Well, CNC has a couple of more steps where you have to kind of learn how to use this machine before it's able to do that. And once you learn that, it's not overly difficult. The problem I had was I refused to just sit down and take a few hours to learn my machine. I was so busy and wanted just for drag and drop. And that's really not what these machines are meant to do. Once you get the file set, you can just recreate that over and over and over, and that's where you really start getting into the production work of a CNC, and it can start generating income if that's what you want to do with it. I have the Shapeoko 5 Pro. Before this, I had the Shapeoko 4 XXL, and one of the great things I like about Carbide 3D, who makes the Shapeokos, is they have a website called my.carbide3d.com, and it literally takes you step by step from the minute you get your machine, or even before you can get into this, and it goes through a course and helps you create your first 5 projects and teaches you everything you need to know about the software as well as the product itself. I think this is one of the most genius things the company has done for CNC machines for beginners. That wasn't available when I started, so I kind of had to trip my way through it and learn. But once I learned the software and understood what was going on with the machine, it's been smooth sailing. Mostly. So if you're a little bit intimidated by CNCs or worried that you won't be able to learn how to use one, I would highly recommend just going to that website. Even if you go with a different machine other than Shapeoko, it will teach you the basics of CNC so you can get a grasp on if you can do this or not. I think you can. I think a lot of us just have a fear of failure and a fear we're not going to be able to learn something, especially when we invest some money into it. But I think you'll be fine. Just go check that out. The next regret I wish I had known was what bits do you actually need? Because if you look on some of these CNC websites, there's so many bits, you just get confused. There's upcut and downcut and combination and straight bits and V bits, and there's a bunch of different kind of V bits. What do you use? It's so confusing when you're starting out. I'm like, just make it simple for me. Just give me a starter kit and let me go. And so that's kind of what a lot of websites have started doing now, is you can buy these starter sets. I'll link in the description and the pinned comments to all of this so you can find it easier. What I would recommend is picking up an 1/8 inch and a 1/4 inch downcut bit that'll cut an 1/8 inch wide or a 1/4 inch wide hole or groove or outline around something. Those 2 bits you'll use more than anything else. So I would highly recommend picking up 2 or 3 of each of those if you can budget it, because things happen. Especially when you're starting out, you're probably going to break a bit here or there. It's not something that I do very often, but when I started, I did break 1 or 2 just because I didn't know what I was doing. So kind of take that into account. And then after that, I would pick up a 60-degree and a 90-degree V-bit. And that's going to help you do some detailed carving like stars and flags and various text and things like that. You'll really use those quite a bit. Then if you think you might want to get some really fine detail stuff, you can get a 30-degree V-bit. It's a very, very sharp bit. It comes down to a sharp point, and then you can get into some really fine detail. And I would highly recommend picking up a surfacing bit. After a while, your spoil board that you're cutting on is going to get all grooved up and things when your bits are cutting. And you're going to want to smooth that back off. Or you can use it to flatten surfaces like boards, if you wanted to flatten boards, or even take epoxy back down to level, which I've done a lot with surfacing bit. And then as a bonus, if you wanted to pick up something like a bullnose bit, these are really great for making trays. Gives it that nice curved bottom on there. It's just kind of an extra. It's not necessary starting out, but it is nice to have if you have the budget for it. I would start with those basic bits. After that, you'll figure it out. After you start figuring out what you want to make with your machine, you may need a specialized bit that you can pick up later. But getting started is the most important part. Now that you have your bits and you understand how the machine works, what do you make? Do you have to have design experience to know how to design these files in some software somewhere? And then I don't know how to design this stuff. On Carbide 3D, their file extension is .c2d. So all I do is go to Etsy, search C2D CNC files, and it gives me a ton to choose from. You can see flags, custom stools that you can put names on, various styles of catch-all trays. If you can think of it, it's probably on there. Cribbage boards, drink flights, even a cornhole board that if you wanted to batch produce these things, download this file, you can start making those cornhole boards for sale in your area. So a lot of this stuff is available online. You don't have to worry about trying to program this stuff. Once you get those files in your software, you can start figuring out how to tweak things and move things around. And it's not difficult to learn that once you get started. The main thing is you want some files to get started with so that you have a basic general knowledge of how the machine works, and you can start producing products, which is what you wanted for this machine for in the first place. And Etsy's a good place to start. I've bought tons and tons of files off of Etsy. The next thing I regret not knowing when I got my CNC was how different accessories to the CNC will make my life so much easier. First and foremost, you need a digital caliper. These will tell you the thickness of the boards, and what you're going to want to do is measure each time you put a new board on there, unless you have them all planed exactly the same thickness, then you can repeat it. But you need a digital caliper to figure out exactly how thick that material is, because your software is going to want to know that when you start cutting, so it knows how deep to cut, all this stuff. Now, it's very easy to pick up one that's really, really cheap on Amazon, but we don't know how accurate some of those are. They're kind of cheapy. I would highly recommend, if you're on a budget, you don't want to spend a ton of money, pick up the iGaging digital caliper. This is a really nice digital caliper at a fair price. If you have the budget, Matotoyo, you tell me if I said it right, makes this one for about $150. This is the one I bought. Now, it is a very expensive digital caliper. I've put 0 batteries in it since I bought it. It's just lasted, and it works, and I've used it a ton. Now, I know it's a very expensive accessory, not necessary. You can get the iGaging one, but these are generally the higher end style digital calipers if you wanted to go that route. Next up, clamps. Lots of clamps, because you got to clamp this material down so that it can be cut. And the little plastic clamps work great, because if your bit does accidentally hit the clamp, it doesn't tear up the bit. It just cuts through that plastic and keeps on rocking. So I recommend picking up several of these, especially when you first start. If you get the carbide machine, they sell these. Or if you have your own 3D printer, you can download their files and print your own. And so that's a good option for you as well. But having a bunch of these on hand is nice. You gotta have them. Another accessory that's been a game changer in this shop is a specific sander that I use for sanding these trays, things like that. Now I've got two. I've got the Rikon, which is a 2-inch, and it's just a spinning sander. It's a buffer, basically is what it is, but you can get sanding discs for it. It's a pretty aggressive sander. I like it to get into the bottom of these trays and things like that. But the Milwaukee M12 orbital detail sander is one of the best made. It's got like a home plate design head on it, and it's an orbital sander, so it's making those tiny little circles. Gets a really nice fine finish in the bottom of these trays and removes those tool marks. Because before I got the CNC, I did not realize that there were going to be those tool marks and things like that in the bottom of these trays. Now there are ways to tweak your files so that it takes several passes on the final pass to make it all smooth and all that stuff. If you want to tweak it in that way, you can. You can get a sander and get those tool marks out of there, however you want to do it, but getting it down to the bottom of those trays, one of these two sanders, depending on your budget and which platform you want to go on, these are really nice to have. Next thing I regret not knowing is double stick tape is your best friend, because you can put this down under your product and then you can set your product down onto this double stick tape. It sticks it to the bed. Now, there's a couple of ones I would avoid. There's some that are very, very thick and sticky. There's a couple of problems with that. One, it's very difficult to get that stuff off the wood once you've done with the project and you pick it up. And second, it gets on your bits because it's really thick and it gums up your bits and you have to clean them more often. I'll link to my favorite in the description that I use. It's a thinner one. It doesn't gum things up and it holds, but it also releases fairly easily, so you don't have to worry about trying to take 30 minutes trying to get tape off your product. So if you clamped it, why would you need tape? Well, sometimes maybe you miscalculated and your product's cutting out. It's supposed to leave little tabs on there that you could take off later so the product doesn't move once the shape is cut out. Sometimes you miscalculated and maybe it cuts a little deeper than you thought and it doesn't make those tabs. I've had this happen, and then once it cuts the whole product out, it starts moving inside the shape and it'll really, really do some damage to both the bit and your product. So I always like to tape mine down just for added security, but you do you. Another trick versus this double stick tape is some people will just use painter's tape, put one piece of painter's tape on your product, one piece on the machine, and then use CA glue to stick those together. I'm not a fan of that because CA glue costs a decent amount of money. If you do that a bunch, you're going to use a bunch of CA glue. I like this because it's inexpensive and it comes off easily, But the really thick one, it just, man, it makes a mess. I regret buying this stuff. The next thing I regret not knowing is a CNC, which I should have known. It's one of those you should know, but you don't until you get it. It needs dust collection of some kind. It doesn't mean you have to have a massive dust collector that you spend a bunch of money on. It can literally be a shop vac with some type of separator. So if you already have a shop vac, then just pick up a dust right separator. And what that's going to do is just separate those big chunks out before it goes into your shop vac so it doesn't clog up the filter and things like that. Now I would recommend, if you can budget a dust collector, this makes things a little bit easier. You don't have to dump it as much, keep it cleaned out or anything like that. But dust collection is key, unless you don't care and it's just making a massive pile of shavings, because these things will produce a bunch of dust, aka shavings from your cuts. The next thing I regret not knowing is speeds and feeds are really important, I guess, but I don't really pay that much attention to it because the software auto calculates your speeds and feeds based on the bit that you've chosen. In the software that I'm using, it does. Now, there are ways to tweak this, and I will tweak it because the software is quite conservative on how fast it's going to make that bit move across that wood, so it's cutting pretty slow. It's always speed this up quite a bit, especially after I run my first product and understand that you can listen. Once you start getting into these machines, you'll hear if it's being taxed or not. If it seems like it's just not working that hard, I always bump up the speed and I'm like, man, you gotta go to work. And that way it speeds it up the process. And you'll be able to see on your software, if you tweak those settings, it'll change the time that tooling will take. So like if it was 8 minutes and you speed it up a little bit, it may drop it to 7 or 6 minutes. So you'll be able to see how fast it's gonna be able to speed it up. And it is good to save time, but a lot of times I'm not in that big a hurry when I'm batching stuff out. I just let the machine go while I'm doing something else. So it just depends on your use case and how much you're really batching out, how fast you need these machines to go. But you can tweak these settings in there. But a lot of people get kind of nervous about speeds and feeds, and I see a lot of questions on that stuff. I wouldn't be overly concerned about it. Most of these modern machines auto-calculate this stuff anyway, so it's not really a concern. And once you start learning the machine, then you can start tweaking these settings. But until then, just let it do what it's gonna do. You wanna stick around after number 10 because I'm gonna give you a bonus tip about pricing your products. Another thing I regret not knowing is when I first got my CNC, I got one that was a 4 foot by 4 foot bed on it. And I thought, man, this thing's so small, I'm gonna be running out of room all the time. I have rarely ever needed, maybe once or twice, needed something bigger than that for a project. Rarely. Most things I make on a CNC are smaller, so small trays, signs, mallet templates, different things like that, or router bit holders, stuff for the shop, stuff to sell online, small shippable items. Now, if you're making big signs, things like that, that may be a different issue, but I thought that I would need a much bigger machine than I actually did. And where that benefits me is I'm in a garage, a small space, and I think now that I have the Shapeoko 5 Pro, which is a 2 foot by 4 foot machine cutting area, takes up about a 3 foot by 5 foot space. It really did reduce the amount of space it was taking up. So I'm able to conserve that space, but I'm still able to produce a lot of stuff on this machine in a garage. I think that the 2 foot by 4 foot is the perfect size for a garage shop, especially if you have other tools involved in your shop, table saws, workbenches, etc. This one really does conserve the space, still gets the job done. Another thing to consider on the size of your machine is a lot of these more modern machines will do indexing. So like my Shapeoko 5 Pro 2x4 machine, I can do a full sheet of plywood through there if I wanted to because it will index. In other words, it'll cut the first 2 feet and then I can move the piece of plywood up and do the second 2 feet and continue on like that. So I could, if I wanted to do a full sheet of plywood, if I was doing a giant sign or a carving or something like that, I could do that with this machine if I so chose. So it really takes away the need for having a big, massive machine unless you're doing a bunch of that style work, and that would speed up production, but you're also going to incur a whole bunch more costs on that machine. As far as upfront buying the machine, it's going to cost you a lot more if you get a really, really big machine. That's why I say these are the perfect garage style machines. Now this is an accessory, but it's something that I regret not knowing before I got my machine, is the spoil board on these machines are meant to be cut into. First time I got into that thing, I was like, man, I made it look ugly. Like you cut down into this stuff, it looked so nice before. But these are meant to do that because they're just MDF. They're made out of MDF. and you can cut down into these and it's okay. It cuts through the material into the spoil board. Now, what's great about this is you can use that surfacing bit I told you about and resurface this several different times before you need to replace it. And this is standard MDF, so you can cut and make your own. But there is another option you can use in place of these spoil boards that kind of upgrades these a little bit. This is from American Revival Crafts. Full disclosure, he sent this to me but asked nothing in return. He said it was just a gift. He wasn't asking for a shout out, nothing. 2 months ago, he sent this probably over 2 months ago and hasn't said a word since. It's truly been a gift. He doesn't know I'm even doing this, has zero idea. Not even gonna let him know until it comes out. So there's that. This is an upgraded spoil board. What makes this awesome, it's 1 inch thick, so it's about a 1/4 inch thicker so you can get more life out of your spoil board. He put 20mm dog holes, 6 of those on the X axis and 3 on the Y axis, so you can drop those dog stops in there and you can have a positive stop for your material every single time so you don't have to continually reset your zero. This gets frustrating for a beginner because when I was a beginner, I would try to get the project close to where it was at, but you still have to set zero. In other words, where the machine's going to start from on the X, Y, and Z axis. This takes care of that. You can just set your X and Y once, and then all you have to do is set Z every time, and then you're ready to roll. Z is up and down, in case you don't know. Not only that, he added extra clamping options because each one of these slats now have 10 countersunk nuts attached into the bottom of these so that you can use your clamps in multiple different places, and it works with all your standard equipment that's already on this Shapeoko. Now this is only for the Shapeoko 5 Pro. Now this gives you a bunch of different clamping options. You can still use your T-nuts as well as your accessories that go in those T-tracks that's already on your bed. So this is a really nice upgrade, and I really appreciate it being sent over. I'll link to it in the description if you want to check it out for your machine. What's great about this spoil board from American Revival Crafts is it bolts right in place on this machine because all those holes are pre-drilled and countersunk. Use the same hardware to attach it. Literally took me less than 10 minutes to put every one of these on. Super cool. Another thing I regret not knowing about CNC machines before I got mine is exactly how useful they are. Not only to make product to sell, which we'll talk about, but it is so useful for the wood shop. I've been able to make a bunch of different things for the wood shop, including this clamp storage, cut it right out on the CNC, bit storage for the CNC bits itself, as well as a router bit organizers, all kinds of stuff that you've been able to make on this machine. I even made this weather station using some weather dials that I got off a Rockler on the CNC. It cuts the holes out perfectly, everything looks nice. Of course you can drill those out, you can do that, but the CNC can do it too. So if I wanted to sell these, I could batch these out and get to selling. But I like to have it in the shop. The next thing I regret not knowing is just because you make it on the CNC don't mean people gonna buy it from the CNC. You gotta figure out what products people actually want to buy. And that will take a little bit of time depending on what you want to make, because just because people are making it and selling it doesn't always mean we want to mess with it and make it, right? So figure out what you like making and what people will actually buy will take a little bit of time unless you already done a little bit of market research and figure it out, kind of get a general idea of what people want. Typically what people want from CNCs are either you can batch produce things like wholesale items, or you can make custom items with their logo, their names, things like that. That's kind of typically what people start making to start generating some income with these machines. And these are income producing machines, make no mistake about it, if that's what you want to do with them. Some people have no interest in making a business out of it, and that's perfectly fine. It's your machine, you do what you want. But if you do want to produce goods and start making some money, you certainly can do that. But it may take you a little bit of time to figure out what products are going to work. But that's okay. Another thing I wish I knew before I got a CNC is the fact that these are shop helpers. I've said this in multiple videos before. This was my first employee because this thing can be working over there cutting stuff out and I can be doing something else. So this speeds up the production in the shop. Time is money. So if I have somebody or something else in the shop making something while I'm also working, that doubles my production. This has become an asset to the shop, and I think that's what this becomes for a lot of people. Now here's the bonus tip. Just because you make it on the CNC doesn't mean you have to price things so low that you can't make a profit. Because if you're not making a profit in your business, then you're not going to be in business very long. You have to make a profit. And just because it was made on a machine doesn't make it less valuable, because you have time invested in keeping the machine up. You also have money invested in the machine, and you're going to have labor costs involved when you take the part off the machine, sand it, finish it, get it ready for sale. And packaging, if you're shipping things, all of that has to be taken into account. So don't underprice your product. So how do you price your product? Well, I've got a free masterclass that you can go join where I talk about going from borrowing tools to going full-time. And in that masterclass, there is a free pricing guide that you can download to learn how to price your products. Go check it out. There'll be a link in the description and the pinned comment. Here's a bonus tip. If you're looking into buying your first CNC machine, do your research and figure out what's best for you in your shop. I have the Shapeoko 5 Pro, but I've been working with Carbide 3D for several years now, so I'm probably biased toward their machine. I love that machine. I like their support. I like all their accessories and everything they got with it, but it may not be for you. Look at Onefinity, look at X-Carve, look at Shapeoko. I'm sure there's others out there in this price range that you want to compare. See what's right for you in your shop before you make your buying decision. If I'm recommending one, it's going to be the Shapeoko only because I've had it and it's the only one I've ever used. I think they're great. It's done everything I needed to do in my shop. And one last accessory I will recommend if you get the Shapeoko 5 Pro is get the VFD. If you can budget it, it's the spindle because it will auto start and stop before and after every tooling, so it knows when the job is over for that tool. It'll stop, come back home so you can change those bits. And it's more powerful than the standard router, so it'll run a little faster, cooler, more efficient. I just like it a lot.
I like it a lot.
One of the questions I keep seeing on the Shapeoko machine is, how is it powered? Does it use 220? No, it just uses regular standard plug-in. You just plug it into the standard plug-in in the US and you're off to the races. You'll need 2 plug-ins, one for the router and one for the machine itself. Even the VFD uses 110 volt. 120 volt. If you like this video and you want to see the full review of the Shapeoko 5 Pro, go check it out right there. Click in that box, get you the big old virtual fist bump.